if you were going to rank the number one creator on the Nets, who's Mikal Bridges, where does that rank? Certainly in the bottom half of the league, if not in the bottom 10. Let's turn now to the Brooklyn Nets, Danny.
Yeah. The Brooklyn Nets, 17-25, 1-5 since the last 15-60. Their below water negative 1.4 net rating is 20th, 15th in offense, 17th in defense. Interesting, their net rating is worse than both their offensive and defensive ratings. They're projected to be outside the play-in with 35 wins by BPI. And it looked like things might be turning around for them. They got a win over the Lakers at the Crypt, and then they had a lead against the Clippers. I think it might have been the next day. It might have been 2 days later. But that lead didn't last.
Yeah, I mean, it was a matinee, so it was close to 1 day later, but it was actually...
Oh, that's why I was thinking of it as 1 day. Yeah.
Technically 2 days. Yeah, they led 114-103 down the end and did not score in the last 6 minutes of the game. They lost 125-114. Although they were within 3 in the last minute or so. Kawhi hit a devastating step back on Spencer Dinwiddie to end it. And they didn't have a ton of great process offensively. They do put shooting on the floor, but they don't have, I mean, if you were going to rank the number one creator on the Nets, who's Mikal Bridges, where does that rank? Certainly in the bottom half of the league, if not in the bottom 10. So they were just trying to pick at various sores that really were not that pickable. Clippers hit the break glass in case of emergency lineup with Ivica Zubac out. They went to Kawhi at center. I guess maybe even more accurately, Russell Westbrook at center. And so Clippers are switching. Westbrook actually is guarding Nick Claxton down the end, and more accurately, not guarding him to the point where Nick Claxton even took a corner three. And I want you to shoot over 50% on free throws before you take a three. Is that okay? But he wasn't being guarded. I would just maybe question the approach that has him spacing out. Instead, they did get one good shot down the end as an ATO that just was missed. Cam Thomas had a three that could have tied it, rimmed in and out, where they started a pick and roll on one side. Then to take advantage of the way that Westbrook was playing, there's a good call by Jacques Vaughn. They got Westbrook to come over to the strong side, not guard Claxton, and then had Claxton set a flare screen on the weak side. They swung it over to their best shooter in theory, Cam Thomas, and it just rimmed out. But that was one of the few good looks that they got down the end. It was trying to get Cam Thomas matched up against James Harden. Cam Thomas, not a very good passer. The one pass he tried to throw almost went over the backboard, trying to set up an alley-oop for Claxton, when, again, Westbrook was kind of camping out in the middle of the lane. It is an interesting tactic to have a quick guard, your Alex Caruso, your Westbrook, guard the guy that you're not guarding, because, yes, they're not as good of a rim protector, but they can also get in and out of the lane faster.
2.9 works differently.
Or get steals with the defensive 3 seconds. They alternated between Cam Thomas, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, no Royce O'Neal down the end of this one, but Johnson really wasn't able to get anything going. They didn't really run any plays for him. With the Clippers switching, the Nets just are not a smart enough basketball team to hurt that. I mean, who would you say, Danny, is the best passer on the Nets?
Dinwiddie, if it's not a lob.
Yeah, but Dinwiddie, he kind of doesn't really get much penetration anymore. We noted some of his shooting struggles. It was funny, he actually clapped back at one of these Twitter social media aggregator accounts that said Dinwiddie had the worst field goal percentage. He's like, how about true shooting percentage, pal? What year is this? But Spencer, your true shooting percentage is not that great, but it's not the worst in the league. That's true. He does shoot some threes and free throws, so that should be added in there for sure. In terms of who is guarding Kawhi, they had a bunch of time with no Royce O'Neal and no Finney-Smith, and Mikal Bridges doesn't really defend anymore. So it was Cam Johnson trying to guard Kawhi. And Cam Johnson, he's a little bit bigger of a body. He probably struggles more with quickness, but he can't defend Kawhi Leonard. And then, of course, if they got a switch with the likes of Dinwiddie or something, that wasn't going to work very well. I mean, they defended pretty well throughout the game, particularly when the Clippers had a center on the floor. But they did ultimately give up a 22-0 run to end the game.
Something I thought about a little bit with that kind of sequence with the Lakers and Clippers games is that there's been some reporting out there that the Nets are more likely to be buyers than sellers. And my fundamental issue with that is, like, for what? Like, I don't think you're going to give up the stuff it would take to get a number one on this team, to get somebody who's going to jump Mikal Bridges in the pecking order. And getting a better third or fourth best player on the Nets would make them better. Absolutely would. But does that make them kind of okay instead of a little bit below okay? More likely than not.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see what happens at center. You know, they've been very good with Day'Ron Sharpe on the floor, obviously going against backups. Nick Claxton has one of the worst net ratings among their rotation players. Most of that coming in terms of offense. And, you know, Johnson has been they just have a lot of kind of okay guys that aren't necessarily being set up that well. I mean, I think when you look at the quality of their creators, to be 15th in offense is not bad, but they play small and they play with a lot of spacing. They shoot a lot of threes. If those aren't going in, it can look really bad. And as I noted, like, they just don't really have great passing. I think Nick Claxton could be a lot better if they had guys who could set him up, if they had, you know, a really good pick and roll threat. And the other thing is, because the Nets don't necessarily have that premium creator, other teams are totally willing to just switch them. And so that Nick Claxton isn't going to post up. They're not really going to devastate you on the offensive glass. In some ways, they're almost a team from, like, you know, that was a modern team 5 years ago, that, you know, still kind of living 5 years ago in terms of, you know, not really getting any offensive rebounds, like not really being able to attack switches that well, but also does a lot of switching themselves and spreads the floor, but not really that creative. Like, they're just way better on paper than they are as a normal basketball team. And I think the stat that really stands out to me there is the Nets are, because they're so switchable, I think, and because they don't have that much passing, they are 9th in the percentage of their shots that are self-created. Which, I mean, who are the great self-creators on this team? I've struggled to identify one. And so they're taking way too many self-created shots, and they are 28th in the NBA in self-created field goal percentage, 46.6%, which is, I mean, that's just an atrocious number. So they just, like, their offense is not generating the type of shots that you need, and so they end up kind of having to bomb a lot of threes that aren't, you know, really, really open, and they just don't have guys who can draw the defense and create for their teammates very well. And it's the drawing the defense part maybe even more so than the creating for the teammates. So that's a difficulty for them.